Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to a few quality moments around the table with the Shabbat table. That is, around the Shabbat table with the Rabbi's son. This is the concluding sections. We're in the last finishing drive of this particular year's Torah studies, and so what that means is our theme next year, which will begin in about 5 weeks, will be a different theme, and the subject matter will not vary, but the details will look completely different because we're coming at it from a different direction. So beginning with the next Torah cycle, which is beginning soon, beginning with that Torah cycle, we'll have a brand new perspective and a different way of looking at it, even a different title for our times together. It won't be called A Few Quality Moments Around the Shabbat Table very much longer. But meantime, at the present time, we are enjoying together a little time on the Sabbath day, the beautiful day of holiness, of Kedusha infusion into the world, when we have a picture of what everything would look like if it was right with the world, if it was right with ourselves, among ourselves, within ourselves, and between ourselves. If we were able to bring heaven's energy and heaven's beauty and heaven's fruitfulness and heaven's shalom to earth, this is what it would look like. We taste that every Sabbath. So we have a few quality moments together doing that as we discuss the revelation stream that the Holy One gave us to give us the answers to life's most important questions. The Torah is that revelation stream. We are in week number 48 of the total of 54 parshas. And so we are almost at the end. And this week is called Shoftim. It is found, its address in your Bibles is Deuteronomy 16:18 through 21:9. So now get you a cup of coffee or tea or some form of water or whatever you like to drink. Get comfortable as best you can wherever you're situated, seated, or get your ears attuned, because we're about to have a few quality moments on this Shabbat around the table with the Rabbi's son. The answers to life's most important questions await us, and they are found in the source the Holy One desires for us to look for them in, which is the Torah. Last week in Parsha number 47 of the series, Re'eh, we discussed Moshe's diverging pathways vision. We took ourselves as if we were out on a journey through a woodland area, and we imagined, as Moshe taught us to do, that before us the road we were on began to diverge into two different roads. We could go to the high road or we could go to the low road, and which one we chose in this moment of diverging pathways choice. We would find out what good or evil we would come, whether it was the narrow path that leads to life, health, and peace, or whether the road ahead that we chose was the broad road that leads to destruction. In the middle of his second discourse on the plain, the last 36 days of his life, Moshe is really laying it out for us. He is giving us a picture, a comprehensive vision for a society on earth as it is in heaven. The plan of the Holy One for all time has always been that he would bring heaven's courts, heaven's majesty, heaven's beauty, heaven's fruitfulness, heaven's wisdom to earth and have it function upon the physical orb of this planet. So the Holy One is using Moshe in his last 36 days to lay out this comprehensive vision, beautiful vision of a society scented by heaven, a kingdom of heaven-scented society. Because you see, he has charged Bnei Israel, the covenant people of Israel, those who walk in covenant through Abraham and his seed and through all those attached to his seed. This covenant people is called and charged to construct and build and maintain and operate and model a kingdom of heaven-centered society. First in the promised land, and then to model and export that from the promised land, the land of the patriarchs, the land flowing with milk and honey, into every part of the world, peacefully to export that into the nations. And so the Holy One has given Moshe this impetus at the end, this energy that is just driving him, and words are coming forth. Devarim, these powerful words are coming forth out of him, and then we're in the midst of his downloads of these words. He's taking care to give us this grand vision. This grand vision of a society that is attuned to the heavens, attuned to the 24 elders and the four living creatures, and most of all, attuned to the one who sits upon the throne at the center of it all, the creator of the universe himself. A society that will co-labor with the Holy One to fix the broken, to bring tikkun nefesh, the healing of the individual human soul, and to bring tikkun olam, the healing, the fixing of the world back to Edenic state. He is bringing us to a place, Moshe is bringing us to this place where we get a picture of it, get a vision of it, get inspired by it, and we get it in stark contrast to the things that we know about society on earth. The things we know about civilization, as it's called by the men upon earth. The things about the raging nations and about the peoples that imagine things, the ethnicities who think they're so great and so much better than every other ethnicity. The ideologies who think they're so much more intelligent and wise and good and moral than the others. We see what folly it all is, what vanity it all is. We see the kingdom of heaven and its beauty. We see justice and life and hope and peace. And we see fruitfulness and shalom, and then we look at the nations of the world, and the civilizations, as they're called, and the cultures, and the ethnicities, and the societies, and the ideological divides, and we say, oh, may it be that the heavens will come to earth. As Yeshua, the Messiah, our model rabbi, taught us to pray, may your kingdom come, our Father in heaven, as it is on earth, as it is in heaven, and may your will be done here. So we contrast the beauty of majesty of the kingdom of heaven with the offense and outrage model, the pseudo-intellect, testing model of the Canaanite and the nations that rage. That dark places of the world, the dark no-fly zones of the world that are dominated by Ra, Shechat, and Hamas, evil as it's called in the King James Version. Shechat is called corruption. Hamas is translated into violence and cruelty. But these things dominate the Canaanite and the nations that rage models of society. Outrage and offense rule them, and they govern ethnicities. Whole ethnicities are captive by them. Ideologies are taken captive by them. Religious cults flow out of them and enforce their ways upon others. That's what we have to deal with. That's the thing we're supposed to be here to counterbalance. So last week in Re'eh we saw this counterbalance, and Moshe pointed out for us as we look at these two pathways, these diverging pathways. We could go the way of the raging nations, or we could go the way of the kingdom vision, the kingdom of heaven sent in society upon the earth. Which one will it be? The critical areas of clean break we need to make were 12. The Holy One had Moshe give us 12 areas of divergence, clean break places where we needed to make sure we didn't follow the ways of the raging nations, the toxic cultures, but we are here to be their counterbalance, their offset, the opposite of what they do. And these kind of things involve the seeing of what makes the nations rage, glorify, and build things. They build statues, they build monuments, they build idols, they build icons, they build images, put up images of things. Why do they do that? What is it that they idolize? What is it that drives them and motivates them if we begin to see them through the eyes of the Holy One? They're the opposite of what the Holy One wants us to put upon the earth. Anything the nations make a monument to, or make an idol out of, or build and try to perpetuate as being some kind of value. We understand that's shallow marks of Ra, Shechat, and Hamas, and narcissism working, sentimentality in some cases, pseudo-intellectual vanity in all cases. We learn to see the difference between things that the nations that rage glorify and build images of and give tribute to, and the things that the Holy One wants us to value and prioritize. Also, Moshe gave us that clean break idea, how to break away from what the pagans do as far as their flashpoints, what makes them angry, what makes them rage, what makes them go off onto vanity, what seduces them, what deceives them, what draws them into the abomination vortex. It keeps swirling downward and downward to the worst perversion after the worst perversion to the even lower level. What keeps them in this system? There are clean break divergence points that we need to recognize. Some of those were discussed last week. So the third thing, the next thing that he talked about last week in Parsha Ed was how to understand that even the way we present our flesh, our bodies, our appearance, our clothing, our demeanor, our skin, our hair, these things, all physical things that we present should be reflections of the creator of the universe, not personal individual taste or cultural adornment or any of the things that the world follows. That our identity needs to be drawn only from the Holy One and from the heavenly realm, and we not to take up the trends and the societal dress and garb and self-decoration, body art of the peoples of the nations. Okay, so these are diverging points. And how well we learn to follow those diverging points will determine what kind of influence we have upon the world. Whether we are a kingdom of heaven-centered influence or whether we're just another raging nation, people imagining a vain thing influence. And then there's the issue that the diverging point needs to be between us and the raging nations as to how we think about, treat the poor and the disadvantaged among the kinsmen and neighbors of our community. How we view them, how we talk to them, how we act toward them, how we help them, how we consider we're partners in the universe with them as opposed to being competitors with them, that we have vanquished them because they've lost. The world nations, the raging nations, they abuse the poor, or they manipulate the poor. They give them things in exchange for obedience, in exchange for service. And as we understand, this is the difference. How do you deal with the poor? How do you deal with the disadvantaged of this world? And then the next thing, a point of divergence that was mentioned in Parsha Re'eh, that Moshe brought out to us, is the fact that we will see ourselves as having one capital. And it's not Babel, and it's not Egypt, and it's not Mecca. It's Jerusalem, one, the capital city of our King, from which he will rule and reign and bring forth life and health and peace from his kingdom of heaven sent in society into the world that we are attached, connected with, and in love with, and inspired by the capital city of Jerusalem. And that becomes the focal point of all of our life and all of our service. And when we are blessed with material things, we take them to Jerusalem and we fund that economy and we fund the people there and we rejoice with people all over the world there. We muster and we gather and we tell our story mostly there. That's the key factor. And then finally, the king's calendar. We follow the king's calendar, not the calendar of the nation. We don't follow Pope Gregory's calendar or Caesar's calendar. We don't follow America's calendar. We follow the calendar. It's the way we think and the way we approach time. We follow the king's calendar. And we tell what he's telling, the story he's telling at each given season and time of the year and of the decade and of the generation. We do our storytelling according to his timetable. The Shalosh Regalim, the three pilgrimage festivals. Last week we got a crash course in it. Crash course in where we are supposed to be different than the nations. A crash course in what we need to learn from as far as the bad example of the raging nations. We learned a little bit about where they went so horribly wrong, where they are still going so horribly wrong, that causes such destruction and devastation in the world, causes such pain and anguish in the world. Where did the nations, the raging nations, go wrong? Where did good people who were parts of vain imagining people groups and ideologies and ethnicities go so horribly wrong that the Holy Land is now vomiting them out? This is particularly the Canaanite. But it's all over the world. All over the world, the land is groaning in eager expectation for someone else to arise that will not be subject to these wrong twists of perversions of life. Where are the nations going so horribly wrong that the land is vomiting them out? Well, it should cue in your mind back to Sinai, and the first day we actually heard the voice of the Holy One. And he gave us Aseret HaDibro, 10 words, 10 defining ideas that would draw us, that would attach themselves to us, that would change our DNA to give us the focus that would cause us not to go so horribly wrong. Each one of those 10 words, each one of those instructions, and those negative instructions, and the positive instructions, and they're more than instructions, they're empowerments. Each one of those is designed to help us fight something that tells us we're the raging nations, vain imagining ethnicities have gone wrong so far. And then we should remember also the must-know stories, the cautionary tales that Torah tells us so clearly. Stories of places like Sodom, and places like Gerar, where Yitzhak had to go and pretend that Rivka was his sister, not his wife, because the people had no fear of the Holy One, no Yirat Adonai, and the people were perverse, and they would immediately take her and use her vilely. So places, the must-know stories, the cautionary tales of Sodom, of Gerar, of Shechem, where Dinah, the little girl that wandered away from her camp, Yaakov's camp, wandered into the town of Shechem, and she was abused, raped, and taken as captive by the prince of that land, one of the leaders of that land. A young man. And so then we have the human trafficking odyssey that took over the whole land of Canaan and the whole region of the Middle East and the whole world, the human trafficking culture that facilitated and gave us the story of Joseph's odyssey, his being sold into slavery in Egypt and our release from bondage thereafter. And also we learn the must-know stories about the Pharaoh cult of Egypt. These things are what Torah teaches us to know. Why did the nations go so horribly wrong? Where did they go so horribly wrong? What is their mistake, and what can we do to be different than them? How can we keep from making the same mistakes? Well, it starts with shemaing the voice of the Holy One, turning our hearts to Him, our minds to Him, our eyes to Him, turning our ears to resonate with His vibrations and His frequencies and His words, and beginning to flow in resonance and in harmony with Him, shemaring, then treasuring and cherishing and carefully guarding every word that comes forth from His mouth, every directive, treasuring it, cherishing it like it was life itself, then building the vision that He told us to build, making it come to pass, including this kingdom of heaven-centered society, to build it, to build the counterculture to the raging nations. And then yadaing, knowing Him with all of our being, getting so closely intimate with Him that we keep davakut, we become one, unifying with Him. We become like Him. We take on His attributes. We take on His characteristics. We take on His words. We take on His demeanor. We take on His vision of who He is. And then we have Him, we love Him. We love Him with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength. And then we zakar, we remember what He tells us to remember. We bring it to the forefront of our mind. We meditate on it. We focus on it. We envision what He wants us to envision. And we mishkan it. We live it. We walk it out as if heaven had come to earth now. We continue to keep that focus. These are the secrets of not repeating the mistakes of the Canaani and the raging nations, of Sodom, of Gerar, of Shechem, of the Pharaoh cult of Egypt, of the human trafficking realm of the Middle East that came its way to America. Well, see, we know now the mission. After Parsha Re'eh in particular, we know the mission. We have to do this. We are called to disentangle and to diverge at strategic points that we've talked about from the nations and cultures of the world. And this critical crossroads that that Moshe brought us to last week, is going to expand. We're going to see the long-term ramifications this week. If we don't follow His instructions, we'll find ourselves falling into the same traps that the Canaani and the Sodomites and the Gerarites and all the other Philistines and all the other nations, the kingdom, Pharaoh cult of Egypt, all those human trafficking cults fell into. Our calling is to partner and co-labor with the Creator of the universe. What a privilege and what an honor that is. We don't run the world, He runs the world, but we are able to serve Him, to be with Him, to work with Him, to co-labor with Him, to partner with Him, to build a kingdom of heaven-centered society on earth, to be a light to the nations and salt to the earth, the physical earth. Now, all we need is a little more strategic briefing, some infrastructure plans, a model of kingdom leadership, a blueprint for the society's infrastructure and leadership. That's what's coming. Parsha number 48 to this week's Parsha, this Sabbath's discussion, Shoftim, the infrastructure blueprint and the leadership model of the kingdom of heaven-centered society. We're going to do this on both a community and a national scale, but it has to start in our own hearts. The kingdom of heaven will come in a community and a national scale when Mashiach comes. But meanwhile, as we appropriate Mashiach in our own lives, as he becomes our rabbi and our guide and our master and our savior in all things, our Redeemer, as he becomes real to us, we begin on a micro level to build out the kingdom of heaven in society, in our own hearts, in our own homes, in our relationships, in our spheres of influence, in our communities, and therefore it builds its way out until Mashiach comes. We occupy until Mashiach comes. But what's the challenge? The biggest challenge is going to be offenses. And offenses will come, Mashiach taught us. There will be things that, an offense, what is an offense? Offense in Hebrew is a distraction. It's like if you're walking along and all of a sudden you had too much alcohol and you get drunk, or a drug, somebody comes along and injects you with a drug and you become disoriented and you stumble. This is what offense is. It's a stumbling by virtue of being distracted or intoxicated. And it could also be by virtue of anger. A hormone flush comes into you, and you're suddenly not able to function, stay focused, and do what you're called to do. This is offense. So when offenses come, when challenges appear, when obstacles arise, when problems come forth and have to be dealt with, well, that's especially when the stark differences are visible, should become visible at least, between covenant people and the ways of the raging nations and the vain imagination obsessed of the iniquities. Offense is the key point. How do we handle offense? The pivotal hinge point passage of this week is going to be, you are to be holy, completely, exclusively. This is Moshe talking. And he says, Tamim tiyeh, you are to be whole. You are to be holy, completely, exclusively, im Adonai Eloheka, with, connected to the Holy One, your God. We are never to be we're never to be intoxicated. We're never to stumble away from the presence of the Holy One. Never to be injected with the poison, the hallucinogenic drugs that the world's media and the world's ideologies keep pumping into us. We're not to be distracted by that. Tamim tiyeh, you are to be whole and holy, completely, exclusively, im Adonai Eloheka, with and of the Holy One, your God, connected to him. Ki ha-goyim ha'ele asher ata yaresh otam deme'omenim. And it will be in contrast to the nations that you are dispossessing and offsetting and counterbalancing, who live in a dark cloud. They're dark cloud folk. Ve'ala kosmim yishmeu, and they are rejectors of Shemai, of the Shema, of the true tone. And the Holy One has allocated no grace for you regarding their behaviors. We're not supposed to be like them. We're supposed to be radically different from them. So, as we get ready to start about our specific discussions of Parsha Shoftim, the 48th Parsha, the kingdom infrastructure and leadership model plan of the creator of the universe given through Moshe on the plains of Moab, what will be the essential elements of the kingdom of heaven Synod leadership model and infrastructure plan? The leadership model first. How will leadership look? What will leadership consist of in the kingdom of heaven Synod society? In what we're going to look at as Messianic kingdom, the Messiah's reign upon the earth. What kind of leadership models will be in a place besides just Mashiach being on the throne? It's going to be modeled after the heavenlies, after the courts of heaven. There are more in heaven. There is more than heaven than just the creator of the universe seated on the throne. Around him are 24 elders and 4 living creatures and cherubim and seraphim, each assigned their task, each assigned their role. There are angels of different levels and varieties. There are the hosts of heaven. All these are in part of the order and the structure of the heavenly synod, of the heavens leadership model So if we're going to have a heavenly scented leadership model, we will have something corresponding to each of those positions, each of those personas in the realm of earth, starting with our own heart and mind, going out to our hearth and our families and our homes, going out to our neighborhoods and our communities, and eventually, when Mashiach comes, over the entire world. So what are the nations? What are the leadership models? Shoftim, the first one's going to be Shoftim. It's called judges in English, but it means people who actually take this leadership role, who take the responsibility humbly and faithfully to bring wisdom to bear in every situation. It's not just about sitting in judging controversies, although offenses are where that always starts. Offenses and disagreements are where it always starts. But it's more than just settling disputes, although that's a big part of it. Shoftim, those who are responsible for publicizing, for recording and publicizing the decrees. Officers, it sometimes were said. Scribes, it sometimes the term is used. Those who are responsible for broadcasting, publishing, and recording, and keeping records of, and permanently keeping the decrees, the rulings of the Shoftim, of those who give the leadership role. Then the Melech, the king, they will actually be talked about. They will actually talk about in Parsha Shoftim, the king, the ultimate king, the one who we're modeling after. And there will be some prohibitions, some things the king of our people will not do that the kings of the nations do. And we're going to find out that historically we haven't had this king yet. The king that's coming will be the one who fulfills those instructions of the Holy One. We'll see that among our people, the Kingdom of Heaven leadership model will include Levi'im, people of the tribe of Levi, of the tribe of Levi. And these people will have certain responsibilities and of selfless service and connection that will not be based upon on profit motive or on getting rich or having possessions. It will be based upon serving the community. That will be the part of the leadership model. Service, not expecting reward or compensation for it. Then there will be the Kohanim. Among the Leviim, this one branch will be called the Kohanim. And this is part of our leadership model. The Kohan are those who actually mediate the word, the loving instructions, and speak on behalf of the Holy One, and do things and do actions upon the earth that are representative of things that are happening in heaven, and bring heaven to earth in that way. The Kohanim, the priests. And then there will be a Navi, a prophet, we call it in English, but one who bubbles up and actually speaks the words that are given to them by the Holy One to specific people at specific times. It's not just a general call or an office of the priest. This is a individual who is given at a given time for a particular group of people for that moment. In that time, in that sequence, in that circumstance, he's given words directly from the Holy One that supplement the Torah, never contradict it or never ignore it. Then there we'll see among the leadership models of the Kingdom of Heaven Synod Society are these Edim, the witnesses. Witnesses are critical, but those who actually saw things, don't have a bias, don't have a dog in the fight, are not partisans in any regard, not prejudiced in any way, but saw things and will repeat what they've actually seen and experienced. Edim. We are his witnesses, right? That's what Mashiach taught. That he got that from the prophet Yeshayahu, who said that Bnei Israel are the witnesses of the Creator of the universe. All right, and then beyond the witnesses, the Zavaot, they're the hosts. Every kingdom has to have its hosts. Some of them, you could think of them as warriors, but these are warriors under authority. Warriors who are connected to the leadership of the great host, of the king, the master of the host, the Holy One himself, and who are following rules, regimens, rules of engagement, who are not independent actors thinking they're soldiers of fortune or soldiers of right or wrong. These are those who are actually under the authority of the Holy One, the Zabaoth, the host. And then there are the Zakanim. The Zakanim are the elders, the wise heads that have learned from experience. These are the cross-generational voices that continue, perpetuate the wisdom of the heavenlies and make the generations flow together and not become disjointed from one another. So these are the models, the Shoftim. judges, as it's called, Shoftim, scribes or publishers of the decrees. The Melech, the king. Who is the king? What are his attributes? How do you know it's really the king? Levi, the ones who are selfless servants. Kohanim, those who mediate the words of the Holy One and the ways of the Holy One and bring heaven to earth and to bear in unique situations where it's needed most, particularly in regard to covering, kippuring, bringing healing to sin and brokenness. The Navi, the prophet, the Edim, the witnesses, Zava'ot, the host under the authority of the king and in subjection to the rules of engagement of the kingdom. The Zakanim, the wise ones who carry forth on behalf of each family and community, who bring forth cross-generational continuity. Okay, these are the leadership model. What's the infrastructure plan? Where do we see our society looking different than others? First place is in the gates, Sha'arim. The first portion of Parsha Shoftim is about what happens in the gates. The idea is that we will have a system of orderly dispute resolution and wise people administering it in the gates of our cities, everywhere people interact with each other. We won't have to wait for some sort of another procedure or vengeance to take place or offenses to rise. We'll have a short list of accounts, and things will be resolved by resolution in the gates. We'll have cities of refuge. We'll have a whole picture of no vigilante justice, no jumping to conclusions, no lynching on the basis of emotion, raw emotion because something bad has happened. We'll have instead an orderly system where people can get a fair trial and a fair hearing. The cities of refuge. Then we'll have defined and defensible landmarks. We will not have just come as you go and fake and take what you want and pretend it's yours. No, landmarks, property boundaries will be sustained and will valued and will not be trespassed. This is our every landmark, every boundary between people's properties. And that won't include physical land, but it will also include their guitars and their houses and their cars, and that we will respect each other's personal property rights. And that's the Kingdom of Heaven's infrastructure plan there. We'll have protocols for maintaining the overshadowing manifest presence of the Holy One. Wow. The priests, the Levium primarily are responsible for making sure that the presence of the Holy One is not driven away by certain things. That's, first of all, indulgence of Ra in our midst. We're going to have procedures for putting away the evil, the Ra, the narcissism from our midst and casting it out of our camp. And also for redeeming the land when innocent blood is shed. See, innocent blood, we got this back from the time of Hevel, when Cain slew Hevel, the voice of his innocent blood cried out from the earth. This is an upheaval, spiritual upheaval to take place upon the earth that happens when innocent blood is shed and is not dealt with and covered. So we have to have a process for redeeming the land. This is what differentiates us and our infrastructure from the infrastructure of the world. They just rage. So leadership. Let's talk a little bit about leadership in the moments we have. Leadership is what happens when an individual or a group with an understanding of a person or individual's potential, as well as that person or individual's weaknesses, and also has a vision, not just an understanding of their potential and their weaknesses, but also a vision for their future, does something, gets engaged, and positively inspires and motivates and guides and counsels. We're talking about leadership. It means to inspire, to motivate, to guide, to counsel, to assign tasks, and to build models and operate models for other individuals in the group to see and to follow, to learn how to face and solve problems rather than stew in and over and about them. To face and solve problems rather than stew in, over, and about them. Leadership does not stew, does not help people to feel, to not curry their emotions, to not pet their rage, to not pet their jealousies and their envies and their prejudices and their biases. Leadership allows people to learn to face and solve problems and bring heaven to earth rather than stew in them and blame people over them and cast aspersions based upon them. And leadership teaches people, shows people how to navigate through negative emotion floods and hormone floods, from lust to anger to rage to jealousy to envy to fear, to navigate through these negative emotions and hormones and the offenses that come with them, rather than give in to those negative emotions, get carried away by those negative emotions and offenses and hormones, and then act out based upon. No, the leadership helps people to navigate through those things effectively, and therefore, in so doing, overcome and grow through the challenges of life, rather than be either demoralized or divided as a society or destroyed by them. Leadership is what happens whenever someone inspires and motivates and guides and counsels and assigns tasks according to and builds models perpetuating the kingdom of heaven-centered society, and will not be satisfied with being right in a situation or being taking the moral high ground or getting popularity or votes. Now, what does it mean to lead? In Hebrew, lead means to exercise a form of self-control without seeking self-enrichment or self-glorification. Leadership in Hebrew is a form of selfless avodah. The word nahal is often used. Nahal, nun, he, and lamed. The verb means to, it's taken from the world of animal husbandry. It means, like a shepherd does, to walk a little ways before a flock or herd, but still in contact with them. It's to serve as that herd or flock's route chooser, the one who makes the routes up, and the waymaker who clears the way in front of them, and who is their guide, and who serves each animal in the herd or flocks, or human being if they're in human leadership, serves to provide their basic needs. Now, not every need, but their basic critical needs of life, and who serves as the herd or the flock's guardian protector against outside enemies and terrain and circumstances and challenges of life, and who is the calm and wise disciplinarian amongst the group, who knows how to correct what needs to be corrected without destroying the unity or destroying the power or even the individual within, to correct without destruction, and also to become and be and serve as an accountable, responsible custodian. That's what a nahal is. That's what a leader is. Are you ready to take on a role of leadership? This is the difference. Leadership in the kingdom of heaven. Leadership in the kingdom of heaven-centered society is diverging greatly from leadership in the world, the leadership of the politicians, and the leadership of the government officials, and the kings of this earth. So let's talk about the infrastructure now. We've talked about the leadership model and what leadership is, defining what leadership is and what it looks like and consists of. And Moshe is also going to talk about infrastructure. Infra is an English way of, it's a preposition. Infra means below or underneath, as in that which supports or sustains. So what is infrastructure? The structure that supports or sustains, and hence the underlying structural elements that sustain and support a country, an organization, could be even a family, it could be a community, but structural elements that underlie and support and sustain that convention. Now, in a household, the infrastructure is the network of beams and joists and strong personalities, and also in physical form, the weight-bearing walls and the foundation that combine to keep the house standing. But it's the glue that holds the family together, the glue that holds the groups together, the ones that have a bigger vision than just the immediate need or the immediate offense. In modern political speech, the word infrastructure usually means like a nation's power grid. It's water and sewer systems, it's networks of streets and roads and bridges and dams, it's railways, it's subways, it's airports, it's harbors, it's army bases, it's supply chain, it's medical institutions, it's education systems and schools, its communications and internet providers. Wow, a lot of stuff. The essential functions, basically, of society are deemed to be infrastructure. In regard to the heaven-centered society, or the kingdom of heaven-centered society, Moshe is telling us to build and is envisioning and laying out for us what are the essential elements of infrastructure. It's not dams and bridges in the physical realm. It's not communications networks and fiber optic cables. What is it? What is our infrastructure in the kingdom of heaven-centered society? What are the unique combination of underlying structural elements that need to be put in place for this counterculture in kingdom of heaven-centered society to operate and model the ways of the Holy One to the world? Before we go too deep into that, let's sing our call to worship. Let's get our hearts attuned to the true tone of heaven. The blessing we sing before reading from the Torah is the Baruch. If you know it, you may sing along, of course. And if not, just listen. Baruch Hu Adonai Hamborak. Baruch Adonai Hamborak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan lanu et Toratu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, our God, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in this earth, so please do not hide your instructions from us. We start with the closing lines of Parsha Re'eh, last week's Parsha, the Pathways Parsha. Deuteronomy 16 through 70 says, Shalosh pa'anim b'shana, 3 times a year, all your males are to appear before. See, this is focusing on the kingdom of heaven's tune and tone. And all your males are to appear 3 times a year before the face, the manifest presence of the Holy One, your God, in the place where he chooses, this great capital city of the great King, Jerusalem, at 3 times Hag HaMatzot, the feast of unleavened bread, at Hag HaShavuot, the feast of the weeks, and at Hag HaSukkot, the feast of the tabernacles. And they are not to appear before the Holy One empty-handed, impoverished, or used up. Wow, okay, that's how the Parsha ended last week. We see this vision where the tribes are coming up to Jerusalem, coming together to live, to be the model example, to rejoice, to sing the song of redemption and salvation and deliverance and healing to the world of Tikkun Nefesh, Tikkun Olam, and bring light and bring salt to the earth. They see this vision. Now begins Parsha Shoftim. How do we make it happen? Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, begins like this. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha. You are to establish, set in place judges and officials for yourselves. B'kol she'areka, in all your gates. Asher Adonai noten lach lishbateka, that the Holy One your God gives for your tribes. V'shavtu et ha'am mishpat zedek, and they are to shafat, they are to release, they are to administer justice, judge the people with true straightness, with true level and plumb, with true solid foundation building, truth and wisdom. Lo tate mishpat, they must not water down or dilute the mishpat, the wisdom that comes from heaven about how to actually solve problems. Lo takir panim, and they are to not to distinguish between faces as being valuable or not valuable, to have prejudices or biases or show favoritism. Ulo tikak shokad, and you must not take any favor incurring or favor securing gift or benefit or bribe. They must not do that. The kiho shakad. Ya'ur eni hachmin, for the shakad, the gift of Curry's favor, blinds the eyes of the wise men, the hakmim, those who have wisdom. This is part of our infrastructure. We must have wise men. But it doesn't just end there by blinding the eyes of the wise men. It twists and misapplies the Devarim, the words of the Holy One, of the righteous ones, of those who are society's foundation layers, the constitution writers. It twists all that. If you give a bribe, if you give a self-interest, if you give something that causes them to be prejudiced or biased in one way or another, partisans in one way or another. So the text goes on from Parsha Shoftim. It goes on with the next verse. Zedek, Theodof. Straightness and plumpness and level and structural soundness and solidness. You must pursue it. You must pursue it. Stay on the actively on the pathway of it, seeking Zedek, straightness, plumpness, level, structural solidarity. Pursue it with all your passion. Why? Lema'an tikyeh verashta et haaretz, that you may inherit and dwell in and fully fill out the land. Asher Adonai Eloheka noten lak, that the Holy One, your God, is entrusting to you in stewardship. Wow. Okay, so that's how the parsha begins. And it's going to go on and build upon that process. But let's talk about then in advance. I'm going to give you an overhead view, a helicopter view of what the parsha is going to talk about. I've got 12 basic elements of kingdom infrastructure and leadership. And the first one is what's in the gates, Shoftim and Shotrim. Everywhere that humanity interacts, everywhere that people interact, there should be a system in place, a group of people in place who can give wise counsel and directive, that have authority, that have the ability to, and the strength of the passion, the weight of the words to be able to be carried into, to bring a solution into effect. Shoftim and Shotrim. The purpose of the Shoftim, which is they're translated as judges by the King James Version. It means those who will actually assume the role of what I called leadership earlier, and we defined a few moments ago as what leadership consists of. The Shoftim, their purpose is to make things straight, make things level, make things plumb, build a foundation upon which society can be enlarged and expanded. The Shotrim are the to record and transmit and publish the decrees of the Shoftim, of the wise ones, of the Hakmim. And then there's the Kohanim. We're going to see the priests, or we're just going to discuss. And the purpose of the priests are multiple, but the idea of having a priest in society, a Kohan in society, is to bring about a way of reconciliation of broken man with the Holy One. Korbanot, the approach, medium of approach to the Holy One at the tabernacle or in life. And then Kippurim, the way of being covered with a salve that actually heals you, doesn't just pretend it doesn't exist or keep it from being seen, but actually begins to heal, like a bandage that is covered with salve or healing balm. That's what the priests are to bring to life. Korbanot, Kippurim, reconciliation between man and God. And then we have the fourth element of kingdom infrastructure, the Melech, the king. He is to be the model of humility and self-denial. He's not to do what the other kings do. He'd go after many women for himself and much gold for himself and many horses for himself. He's not to pattern himself after other nations like Egypt and take the people back to another culture of bondage and human trafficking and death and idolatry. He's not to do that. And so that's the idea of having a melech. The fifth of the kingdom infrastructure elements is the levi'im, selfless avodah, service of mankind, not for purpose of financial gain, not for purpose of jostling for positions and getting titles, not for any of the things that you see most religious organizations fighting over, positions and titles. No, selfless avodah, the levi'im. The sixth of the kingdom infrastructure and service model elements that he's going to talk about is the prophet, the Navi, the one who bubbles up with a specific word at a specific time for a specific people at a specific moment. The Daber B'Shem Adonai, that builds upon the Torah, that expands the Torah, explains the Torah at least, and applies the Torah to a given situation. Then there's the seventh element of the kingdom infrastructure and model of leadership, and that's the cities of refuge. We're to have a presumption of innocence and a fair trial due process procedure marked by many different elements of due process. And then we're to have a sanctity of landmarks, of boundary lines, of property lines, of property rights, nachala, inheritance. If there's going to be an inheritance, if there's going to be a passing down, then we cannot have people usurping other people's property rights and taking what they want as theirs and claiming it's somehow theirs. The ninth element of kingdom infrastructure is witnesses, true, credible witnesses that actually just don't give their opinions and don't operate out of bias or prejudice or take a partisan stance, but instead just tell what they saw, what they have seen, and what they have actually witnessed, and become faithful and also be accountable for everything they say, willing to be accountable for everything they've said, and take the penalties of being dishonest in those regards. The 10th element of kingdom infrastructure that will be discussed in Parsha Shoftim is the host, the Zavaot, the host, the warriors, the security for our borders and our sovereign nation. This is what the people on, we will have people on earth that match the host of heaven in the heavenly realms. And these are ones that do not operate as lone rangers and do not try to think they're somehow vigilantes or doing social justice vengeance, but instead are following rules of protocol, rules of engagement, and orders from the king. And then the 11th element of the kingdom infrastructure that's critical is beginning back at the home. We're going to see it in chapter 20 of Deuteronomy. It's going to be a discussion of when you go to war. There are certain things that override the responsibility of the hosts and the warriors to secure the border and secure the sovereignty of the nation. There are certain things that override that. One of those is marriages, if you're just married. So marriage is such a key factor to the kingdom of heaven. Ascended society. If we ever forsake or devalue marriage, we've lost it. The second thing is building a house and a home and a household together with a family. That's the second key. If you're building your household, if you just got your house built, don't go to war. You take care of that first. And the third thing is free enterprise, the idea of parnasah in Hebrew, the idea of making a living. If you are just establishing your business or your vocation, go back to that before you do your warfare. These are more critical than the security of the borders. The Holy One will take care of that with the right people, but hosts and warriors are secondary to those who build marriages, build homes, and build free enterprise, and bring about abundance in the economy. And then the 12th and final, as it were, element of kingdom infrastructure that we'll talk about in Parsha Shoftim is the community's elders. It's Zignei Ir, the Irim, the elders of the city. Those who exhibit wisdom, they're Chochmim, they're the wise ones. They exhibit cross-generational influence. They tell stories. They remind people of the past, and they look forward as well to the future. They're not bound with the now, as most people in the younger generations typically tend to be. A bigger perspective, a bigger vision, a connection to the past, a hope for the future. This is the role of the elders in society. Well, I've run out of time to talk with you today in our discussions of Parsha Shoftim. We've had a few quality moments around the Shabbat table with the Rabbi's son, but it's over for the day. I commend you to your individual studies, to your communities where you're going to go to worship and study and meditate and discuss the Torah, to your rest of your Shabbat when you just find the kingdom of heaven, ascended society, awakening within your own heart. I bless you in those things. Drop me a note and let me know you were here and what's going on in your life, if at all possible. Blessings to you. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.